my man, Sheik Mozart, baby.
That's right.
What's up, buddy?
Here we are.
So, man, thanks for hanging out.
Oh yeah, thanks for inviting me to hang out.
So we got connected earlier this year, right?
Yeah.
So it feels like we've been together for a very long time.
Yeah,
we've
it
done
does.
a lot in
I
a year.
was talking to our mutual friend Steve, and
You mean the Pro Presenter Poppy?
the pro presenter Poppy, the one and only.
He's amazing.
And it's amazing that a year ago today, I knew nothing about Church Visuals. The company, obviously, Church Visuals as a concept I was familiar with.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, now you're in.
Now I'm in.
Yeah. So, so for those who don't know, tell the folks how you serve on our team.
Yeah, so I am the creative director over our ready-made products, and that's all the products that go on the website. So that's mini movies and series media, theme packs, all that stuff. I kind of help to guide and give our producers and our designers all the pieces that they need to put it all together.
And you also serve as a video producer.
And I also make video.
So
Yep.
you're doing a ton of video
Right.
content.
Yeah.
So skilled in motion design and stuff like that.
Sure. Yep.
So I wanted to have you on this particular podcast to talk about your background, especially in kids ministry in general, but especially the music portion, how
Yeah.
you got into it.
Yeah,
So
of course.
let's kind of dive into that. Give me the origin story of Sheik Mozart into kids ministry.
Oh yeah. So like
the goodness.
Yeah. How I got my superpowers, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get bit by anything or?
I did a few times, but that's
Okay.
unrelated. So I was born in Brazil in 1989. No, sorry, 1983.
Cool.
But I moved to the States in '89. That's that's why my head got.
right.
And I was raised in church. My mom was a pastor's kid, so even though I wasn't a pastor's kid myself, I was a pastor's grandkid, and church was just very, very important to us. At around the time when I was like 12, 13, I found myself kind of drawing away from church, and not really feeling a need to pursue a relationship with Jesus, not feeling a need to be involved in anything, and so I went through a couple years where I was just kind of spiritually just, aloft, as it were, and my parents still insisted I had to be at church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, and then for our youth group on Wednesday. And so I found that in order to meet that requirement of being in church, but being able to do whatever I want, I started to volunteer in our parking ministry, and so we would just kind of, me and my buddies in the parking ministry would just hang out and do whatever. And then there was this girl in the youth group that I had a crush on, and I found out that she worked in the kids ministry. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm working in the kids ministry. And so I signed up with the kids pastor and started, a week or two later. I was 14, 15 at this point, so it was like too young to have a background check. It's just kind of jumping in there. The week that I started, she was not there, and I've never seen that girl ever again in my whole life. So,
Wow.
Angel, maybe.
Maybe.
And when I started doing kids ministry, again, I didn't really have a personal relationship with Jesus at this point. I really just wanted to get out of going to services. But very quickly, I found that a lot of the skills that I had, a lot of the things that I liked to do, I was able to do in this environment. And it was about a year later, on this sort of a retreat with the youth group, that I had this kind of big personal moment with the Lord, really for the first time, and it was out of that moment that not only did I finally start to develop my personal relationship with Jesus, but also realize that this thing that I've been doing, being a part of kids ministry, might very well be what I was called to do. And what I loved about kids ministry was the ability to create and to be a storyteller and to make environments that would allow kids to learn about Jesus, learn about the Bible in a way that was super engaging, super fun, super just like 3D. You know, they got to experience it. And around the time I was like 14 or 15, I started to get into hip hop, you know, and just like really loved, especially, I mean, this was the 90s, you know, this is some of the greatest hip hop music in history, and just
We have similar stories there.
yeah, both, in the hood, no, I'm not.
Sorry,
I'm not from the hood either.
Keep going.
And I always wanted to do music, but I wasn't. My mom was a singer, my dad was a singer, my sisters were singers, but I was not a singer for whatever reason. And I found that hip hop kind of became this way for me to express myself musically, you know. And so around that time, I started making beats and doing that whole thing, and then so here I am doing kids ministry, doing hip hop. And now I got saved. You know, after, you know, here's what I've learned is that if you get saved, it really helps you in your ministry. So that's just a free one for everyone.
Did you get into ministry and don't feel like you were saved?
Well, when I was a kid, you know,
Gotcha.
when I was like, because it wasn't until like 14, 15 where I had a relationship with Jesus.
Gotcha.
So then when all these pieces kind of came together, it really created this perfect storm of like I could do ministry, I could do music in ministry, and just make it as fun as possible, you know. And so then a few years later, I started learning instruments and just kind of expanded my musical vocabulary.
So that led into church jobs, right? Kind of give me your career path.
Yeah, sure. So so I went to school. I went to a school in Lakeland, which is nearby. It's called Southeastern University. It's a Christian school. It was a Assemblies of God school. I started as a practical theology major, which is ministry related, but more and more I felt pulled towards the communication side, and so I went in that direction, always with the intent of going into ministry, going into kids ministry, and just because of my sort of mix of talents, I just was able to kind of plug into some really cool kids ministry opportunities. And then the week that I left school, that I graduated, I started serving in full-time ministry at the church where I got saved and spent so much of my life.
So walk me through, that was your first kind of major career job.
Right.
And how many churches did you served a couple of churches since then?
Yeah, I've served like 4 or 5 churches, I think, and they've all been
all
in
as the
Florida.
kids pastor role?
As either kids pastor or next gen pastor, so overseeing kids ministry or overseeing kids and youth.
So did those churches give you an opportunity to make music, or did you do that on the side? How did kind of music and kids worship intertwine with your ministry? Well,
you know, interestingly enough, from the time that I was in college, I kind of stopped making music for a long time, you know, and it wasn't really until quarantine that I started making music again. You know, I bought some turntables and I started learning some DJ stuff. I went back to producing, and one of the first projects that I did, one of the first musical projects that I did was for our kids ministry, because we're constantly creating content. You know, we're all quarantined, so the only way to get, you know, to connect with kids and families was through video. I made a Joseph hip hop musical. You know, so over the course of a week, I mean, more or less, you know, it's about half an hour long, and over the course of a couple weeks, I think that we were out of quarantine at this point, but it was still pretty early. So, so I was using some of our volunteers, you know, and I made all the music, I wrote all the lyrics, we recorded and wrote out the script, and that kind of reminded me of my history up to that point, you know, because I'd really kind of forgotten about music to a certain degree.
So tell me, in the last few years, you've written and produced videos to a lot of your songs.
Yeah.
Tell me the origin story of Hee Haw, I'm a Donkey.
Okay.
Which is a lot of, you know, we pick on that song, we have fun with it internally. But it's a song that you did a few years ago that you
Right.
put a video
Well,
to.
it's this year.
Was this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, 2023.
Okay, so walk me through how that came about for you.
Yeah. So I'd had kind of this idea of creating music for kids' church that was not necessarily worship music. You know, growing up, I remember singing songs like Father Abraham and all these songs that were church songs, but not necessarily worship songs. And then over the last 20 years or so, there's been this push in children's ministry, which has been incredible, to create authentic worship experiences for kids. And I love that. At the same time, I feel like some of those songs that were just kind of fun songs had this sort of celebratory spirit, this joyful spirit, and a lot of them connected you with specific scripture and specific moments in the Bible. You know, so Father Abraham is the story of Abraham, or you've got the Bible, that's the book for me. You know, songs like that. I wanted to create a project that kind of took that idea of music and did it in kind of a hip hop or more urban way, you know, style. And so it wasn't until in January, when I stepped out of full-time ministry, that I could finally sort of bring that idea to life, you know. And so I wrote these 4 songs, and I called it the Kids Church Party Music, Volume 1. And I remember just walking around one day. I like to create when I'm just walking or doing any sort of movement, and I was trying to just think of ideas for songs, and it was I was getting ready for Easter, and I thought, well, it would be a cool way to talk about the Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. It'd be cool to do that as a song. And so I had this idea that, like, that line, "Hee haw, I'm a donkey," was like there. It was like it manifested itself, almost completely formed. And I was like, well, it needs to be kind of somewhat educational as well, you know. So as I was writing the verses, each verse ends with an educational fact about donkey.
Of course, as one
right
would need.
I love carrots, you know.
Right.
You know, things like that. You just want to make sure that the music is uplifting, but also, you know, educational as well.
Okay, so let's get into well, that was kind of the intersection of that we kind of met.
Right.
So
yeah.
So we're in 2024 now. So this is almost a year ago, that you did a video to that song, and then you've created some other videos and games and countdowns and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
But we found each other, and that was kind of the main hit song,
yeah,
right?
That was a touch point.
And video that we were playing in my car.
Yeah.
And my boys are like, "You've got to hire that guy." I was like, "I don't know."
And you know what's funny is that out of those 4 songs that I wrote initially, that one is still not my favorite, but it's just kind of taken on a life of its own.
Yes. So let's now move to video. So when you did these songs, especially the donkey song, it came with an incredible video. So you spent time creating a visual for that. So let's transition into when you're in kids worship, especially. Why are visuals so important to a kids worship experience?
Well, you know, I think that visuals are important because the experience is important, you know. And I think that when a kid enters into your kids' church space or your Sunday school class or whatever it is, you're kind of inviting them into the story that you're going to tell, you know. And it's not necessarily specifically the biblical story of Jesus. It's the story of your relationship with Jesus and the way that you communicate the gospel to those kids. And I think that video is such an important element of it because it adds so much energy and life, and kids as well as adults, we're all sort of wired to respond to video and to respond to images, and so I think that the visuals matter because it's such a powerful way to tell the story.
So we're at the Children's Pastors Conference in
Right.
Orlando. Me and you are going to be doing a breakout.
Yeah.
And one of the stats that we're going to share is that video, people register video 60,000 times faster than text.
Really?
60,000.
60,000.
So is a picture worth 1,000 words? There could be an argument that a picture is worth 60,000
Right.
words. So the visuals are so incredibly important.
Yeah.
So walk me through why you think quality matters. Why can't it just be any visual? Why do we really want to lean into the quality? And can kids tell the quality level of our visuals?
Yeah. For me, as a creator, I feel like there's a strong connection between quality and effectiveness, and I think that your ability to communicate well comes from the amount of quality that you can insert into a project, in the writing, in the designing, in the producing. I think that the more you pour yourself into something, the higher your ability to use that to impact people. So I think that's the correlation, is excellence to me equals effectiveness. And kids are so bombarded, as we all are, so bombarded by media, and I think that they can tell when something is made with passion and care versus when something is just kind of thrown together.
Okay, so I want you to define excellence. What do you mean by excellence? Because a question that I've been wrestling with lately is what looks good on screen. Like, I can know what I like on screen, and after me and you have been doing this a while, there's some standards of don't do that, do this.
Right.
But to teach a kids pastor that, I'm wrestling with, like, how do kids pastors know? They might not have a background in design or video like me and you do. So how do they know what's good or bad? So maybe define, what do you mean by excellent?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think that there's different ways to approach it. When you think about some kids show on TV, and you compare your content with that content, obviously that's one way to know if you're the quality of your image, the quality of your production. I think excellence is also connected, especially if you're creating something. I think that there's something to be said about the connection between honesty and excellence. If you're creating something and you're creating it with passion and with intent and purpose, I think that excellence manifests itself through that. Now, obviously, if you're a kids pastor and you're just looking to pull content, I think that you have to think about your audience first and foremost, because obviously what might be attractive to an adult or what maybe something an adult would want to see is different, and so I think that purpose is just an integral part of excellence.
Or knowing your audience.
Knowing your audience, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so both you and I are motion designers.
Yeah.
So we do motion graphics, and the program that we use heavily is After Effects.
Right. Yes.
So I want people to know that me and you can geek out over After Effects and keyframes and stuff like that.
Keyframes! I love keyframes.
But why
Plugins?
Plugins too.
Boy.
So why is motion graphics? So one thing that I've done over the years is when we're looking for a new video producer, is I look for motion designers, because motion designers can edit video.
Right.
Can be a video editor also, but it doesn't always work in reverse. A video editor doesn't necessarily know motion graphics.
Sure.
So why motion graphics? Why are motion graphics effective?
Well, the funny thing about that is that I can kind of only answer that from my perspective, But I know if I'm watching a movie trailer, I can tell the quality of the movie based on the the quality of the way that the logo animates on screen. And there is something a little bit intangible about it.
Subjective.
It's subjective. Yeah, for sure. But for me, and maybe it's just because I'm a nerd. I don't know.
Well, I can confirm that.
Well, but there's so many types of nerds. I'm like a cool nerd. Like, oh yeah, I'm a nerd, but I'm cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, when I see a logo pop up on screen, in a trailer, that will immediately determine for me whether or not this movie is going to be worth watching. And I don't know if everybody experiences that, but for me that's a big deal.
Okay, so we've talked through your background, we've talked through the importance of visuals in kids worship. Now let's hit on, and I don't want to sound too sales pitchy here, but I want to give people kind of a behind the scenes look at what we do at Church Visuals on the ready-made side as well as the custom side. But let's say the ready-made side, let's camp out there for a bit and talk about the intentionality that we put in crafting visuals for kids pastors specifically. So games, countdowns, mini movies, maybe walk through the process of how we go from idea, creative, script to fruition. Walk that process out.
Well, let me say this right off the bat. As a former kids pastor, I know that there's a difference between kiddie and kid friendly. And I feel like folks that aren't used to creating content for kids will often just throw colors on screen and splash a bunch of stuff and think that communicates, and that doesn't. Because kids have as many emotions as adults, and so you can create something that's serious for kids. You can create something that's going to kind of get them in their feels a little bit. So as I'm kind of putting together ideas for products, I start with that in mind. I'm not necessarily looking for just a bunch of colors and a bunch of shapes and all that stuff.
Can I speak to that point for a second?
Yeah.
So I think you're right on that, and I think we usually try, this is maybe a little behind the scenes, we try to hit a little bit of an older age group.
Right.
Knowing that if it's cool for the older kids, the youngers will follow along.
Yeah.
But if it's too kiddie, the olders, it would be too cool for school.
Right.
So we kind of hit that older elementary maybe, for kids especially.
Yeah.
But do you agree with that?
Oh yeah,
model?
for sure. For me, the hardest audience to reach as a kids pastor is your fifth grade boys. So it's like if you can impress them, then everybody in the room is like floored.
Right.
So definitely.
Good. Okay, keep walking that process out.
Yeah. So the way that we begin is we create the idea. And we might get that idea from a million different places. It might just be you're walking around and the inspiration strikes for a game that you want to do, or you're watching something else, whatever it is. So we start with that germ of an idea, and then we start to think through what it could look like. So for our designers, I start kind of assembling different inspiration pieces and pulling different assets together. And that goes to the graphic designer first. And the graphic designer will send us a couple of mock-ups of some ideas and that kind of are in that direction that I initially pitched. And sometimes they'll submit an idea that's pretty close to the idea that I had or the instructions that I had. And then they'll submit another idea that's way different. And very often we go with the one that's way different, you know, because that's just the cool cool part about collaboration is that I could have an idea, but then when somebody gets that vision, they might take it in a direction that I didn't anticipate, but is even better.
Right.
So that's kind of how it starts, and then myself or you or Matthew, our director of Ready Made, will have thoughts on either one of those concepts, and we'll pick one and they'll build it out. And then once they've built that out, it'll go to our video people, and our video people do kind of the final assembly and animation and motion graphics and all that.
They are really excited over that.
Yeah, they're
ready for CPC.
Hey, we're trying to have a conversation here.
Man, Sheik, thank you so much for hanging out.
Oh,
I really
yeah,
appreciate you.
thanks for letting
I
me.
want you to know that, man, I wish that we had a million more Sheiks on the team.
Well, I'm glad we don't because,
Because why?
well,
Because you're getting all the glory for yourself?
You can only have
Is that
so
what-
much
what you're saying?
of something that's this incredible. You know what I mean?
Right. Too much good in one place just combusts.
Yeah, it'd be overwhelming.
Right.
We're not
right.
ready for it.
Yep. And humility is a big thing on our team, too.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Well, man, thanks so much for hanging out. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
This has been a podcast presentation of Church Visuals, executive produced by Carl Barnhill, edited by AJ Schubert, title and show graphics by Angie Lomas. For more resources to help you visually communicate the gospel in your kids' ministry, visit churchvisuals.com.